be scared. I mean, I'm not scared, so. Okay, welcome. A little bit, right, I know. I'm like, that's what I was saying. I'm like, is it hot? Or I'm like, okay, so, well, first of all, welcome to everybody new. This is so nice. And family. Thank you, Rachel, for coming. It's funny, I had my friend here for Shabbos, Nicole Berger in El Spiro, and she always like watches my classes, and I always joke, like whenever I start my classes, like she's like the first one to like pop up. I'm always like, hi Nicole. So like it becomes like part of my routine. Everyone's like, who is this Nicole that you're always saying her name? I'm like, she's the only one who really gets a shout out here. But anyways, okay, so this is what we're up to now is part 3 of Tanya. So what we explained is the Baal Tanya, who's the first Lubavitcher Rebbe, he took it upon himself to write this book, and these were all the questions that people have ever asked him or were to ask him. So he put down almost everything, like he put down how to be a perfect in-betweener, and we'll explain that all in this book. So this book is just basically how do you be the perfect blend of perfection and not perfection. So like the one side extreme would be like a tzaddik. A tzaddik is an incredible person who doesn't do anything bad, who doesn't have any instinct that they have. They act upon it like with, oh, come in. Oh, hi. Welcome. Oh, do we still have chairs? I have in my basement. I like literally was like, yeah, right when you go down to the bottom of the steps. Okay, thank you. I'm like, here I'm thinking like 2 people are going to show up, so I set up like 4 chairs, but there's always more. Sit. Yeah, don't worry, you can sit. We were just reviewing. So basically, we said that a tzaddik is a perfect person who has instincts, but everything that he does is all about Hashem. And then there's a rasha who's a bad person who all his instincts are just, for himself and things like that. But what the Baal Tanya explains is what we're looking for. Perfection is being an in-between person. And we explain that an in-between person is somebody who has instincts like the tzaddik, instincts like a rasha, but does not act upon it, but acts like a tzaddik when it comes to anything bad. Like we have drives. And then the way that he explained this is through the 2 neshamas. So he explained that when we come down into this world, we have 2 neshamas. We are born with an animal soul, and that's like the animalistic part of us, but not evil. And we'll explain a little bit more today. Not evil, just an animalistic part of us that just wants to take care of itself, just wants to self-perpetuate, just thinks about itself, ego, feed me, the baby that wakes up in the middle of the night screaming, and you're like, what? Like if you wake up in the middle of the night hungry, like, okay, you put your shoes on, you go downstairs, you get something from the fridge, or you control it. A baby can't. They don't have that ability. So that's where the animal soul is like, only give me, take care of me, feed me. That's all I need. That's how I'm going to survive. And then later on in life, we're given a second soul, which is the godly soul, which is a neshama, a part of Hashem, a piece of Hashem, that he gives to us, actually, like we said, boys at 13, girls at 12, and that's your nefesh elokis, and that's your godly soul. And that's a spark of Hashem that piece of that, your neshama that comes down here, that neshama that comes to you, all it wants to do is just go back up. It's like, like those trampolines, like you bounce, you go down, and then all it wants to do is just go back up. It doesn't want to be here. All it wants to do is go back to where it came from, its creator, and it almost like wants to just die. Like an extreme version would be dying al Kiddush Hashem, right? Like a part of us that just says like, oh my, like Rabbi Akiva, when at a certain point he's like, I don't need this godly soul anymore. I don't need this. I don't need to be in this world. All I want to do is go back to Hashem. So it's all it wants to do. So now if you have these 2 souls within you, it's like the example that we gave. It's like when Rivka had twins inside of her. It's like constant battles. It's like, feed me, I want pizza, I'm hungry. And then it's like, I just want to learn, I want to daven, and I want to be closer to Hashem. And those 2 are opposites. They're very extremely opposites. They by the way, they're like, those magnets, like the opposite of the magnet, they like pull it, like they repel each other. Thank you. They repel each other. So imagine you dealt with that on a daily basis. And that's kind of what we deal with. So right now, we all have to think for 1 second, who's in the driver's seat? Is my godly soul in the driver's seat, or is my animalistic soul in the driver's seat? And as long as the animalistic soul remains the driver, remains the horse, and we remain the rider, then we're good to go. If we're in control of the car, if we're the one steering the steering wheel, then we're in a good place. So our godly soul has to be in front of our animal soul, and that's how you can be a Beinomi. That's what he explained. That's how you can find the perfect balance. Then we went on to say, so what is a soul? So like we're talking all about souls like it's real and it's normal, but like it's not. Like we're sitting in a house and there's beams and there's buildings and there's lights and there's cameras, and it's like, so but how do I explain a soul? I can't. A soul doesn't have words. It's not real. So we learned that when a soul comes down into this world, it's actually a reflection of God. Okay, so Hashem is made up of what we call spheros. The way that he created a soul is he takes himself and he flips himself out, and all the soul powers, all the spheros, the kochos that he has, he instills into this neshama. So for example, our neshama is made up of, like, what is the structure of our neshama? It's made up, and let's see if anybody remembers, there's 3 intellectual and then 7 emotional, right? So we have 3 intellectual, which we explained was chachma bina das, which is your intellect, your ability to discern, and then we explain that fuses with das. So if you have, let's say, masculine energy, which is wisdom, and the idea, we explain that chachma is like a nakuda. It's just like a drop of something, and it contains within it everything. And then together with bina, which we explained that, which is like a feminine trait, which is able to unfold it, those 2 together with das can create the 7 emotional. So you can't just leave your chachma on one side and your bina on one side, and then you'll just develop. Without da'as, without focusing and harnessing those 2 and bringing it together with da'as, which sometimes we describe as intimacy, that would be male-female relationship, that's how children are born. So if you don't focus it, then you don't have anything. On the 2 sides of the room, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Thank you. I underestimated you guys. I'm just saying. So if you have on one side, you have chachma and you have this idea and this like vision of what you want to do, and then you have a CEO who's going to put it all into place. But if you guys don't bond and meet and talk, nothing's going to happen. If you sit on one side of the room, you want to develop an app, and you are, proficient in Excel or whatever things that you need to do in order to create the app, if you guys don't sit down and meet and discuss this and focus on this idea, nothing's going to be born of it. So we explain that those 3 are the intellectual, and we can see those as the parents. Like, it's a great mashal as parents, a mother and a father. Everybody brings something to the table, and then from that comes your children, which are your emotions. So your emotions are chesed, gvura, Tiferes, Hod, Netzach, right? Yesod, Malchus. We explain that you have emotions. You want to give to people. You want to restrict from people, right? Like, I was just saying, like, no iPad. Like, it's very hard for me. Like, my 5-year-old is home by herself. She comes home from camp and she's like, hey, can I watch? And I'm like, let's not let, I'm the parent, right? I'm in charge. I'm going to tell you how I want you to act, right? There has to be some restriction here. I know it in my head, and you make these intellectual decisions that affect your emotions. Think about it. Before you make a decision and you want to make like a solid, good decision, if you use your intellect and you focus it, then the things that are created are things that you thought about. So we were saying this last week, like, if you have an intention, and like, I feel like this is just the Jewish version of like, almost like manifestation. Like, it's like, what is it? The world, it's like such a, like, it's on trend right now. Like, everybody like wants to manifest in these positive thinking classes. And what is it? Like, here, it's based in Tanya. It's real. What we're saying is that the things that you think about and the things that you focus and the things that you care about are the things that are going to change you emotionally. Like, if you, like we said this last week also, like, if you focus on a certain kid, you will see that child being born again. If you spend, not even like, okay, whatever, spend time, give the iPad later, whatever it is, but if you focus on something that you want, you are able to achieve it. And this is really free will. This concept is like so much free will. Like, don't think for 1 second, I can't control myself, because that's how I was born. That's how I am. I have a difficult kid. I have a difficult whatever. I'm having cleaning lady situations, whatever. Whatever you're having, if you focus on the things that you want and you care about and you think and you have intent with it and you have da'as, which is really something that this world is missing, like we all are, like, I'm struggling with that ability to focus. When you have that da'as, that brings that knowledge. We explained last week also that, like, that Adam knew his wife. What does it mean by Yodeas his wife? In an intimate way, he knew her, he understood her. And sometimes, by the way, like, that knowledge is so much more important. We'll get into this a little bit more, but like, knowing what somebody likes, it's the coolest thing. If you think about it, like, I always joke, like, when somebody buys, like, somebody a gift, right? Like, my daughter's very into, like, cards now. Like, it's his birthday, let's buy a card. I think it was, like, in Trader Joe's. I don't know if you ever noticed this. There's, like, a whole rack of cards. And, like, whenever I'm there, she just, like, loses herself. And she's like, there's no toys in Trader Joe's, but there's Hallmark cards, whatever, or Trader Joe cards. So she's like, let's get a card. And, like, sometimes you open up the card and you're like, they're so generic. Like, roses are red and violets are blue and, like, I love you. You don't really love me. You don't even know if I like this card. But if somebody takes the time to, like, actually write a letter, and then like you put thought into that, you put like your intent into that, emotions come from that. It's funny, like recently my grandmother, Bobby Surrey, she was like, Faigy, come over, I found a letter that you wrote to me. I'm like, a letter? Like, who writes letters? Like, I don't write letters. Like, and it was like, I had to read, I had no idea when this was from. First of all, my handwriting looks like I'm in 7th grade, but like, she's my grandmother through marriage, so like, it had to be like after her. And then I write like, living in Israel, and I'm like, I didn't even know her. Like, I was like married 1 year, and I was like, writing this letter, you're amazing, mommy. But it doesn't matter, because I took the time to write it, and like, also, like, I feel like, do you even know your handwriting anymore? Like, like we don't know. I was like, looking, I'm like, that's my handwriting. But I was like thinking like, wow, like there was focus and intent that went into it, and then feelings developed from that. I think about this a lot. Like the Rebbe, he was very, very famous. He has like actually a whole book. You could just buy this book about the letters that he wrote to people. He was very into like writing letters and responding back in letters, because you have to really focus and put all your intent into that, and then things come from that. Like he says about the Rebbe that at first people would write him letters. He didn't want anyone to open up the letters. He wanted to be the one to open it. It was like so many letters coming in that he had somebody with like, do you know those like letter openers? Like it's like a knife. He had it in my house. It was like, what is this? Like it wasn't like a regular knife. It was just to open up letters in my father's office. He wanted to be the one to open it, because he said, imagine somebody sealed this letter with their tears. Like, I want to feel those tears. So that's really what Chachma, Bina, and then infusing it with Das, your emotions are born out of that. So we explained that you have free will and you have control. That's your Chachma, Bina, Das developing into your emotions. And then we went one step further and we started talking about how the soul works in this world. Okay, so now we have a soul. Great. Now we have all these, we have soul powers, right? We have Chachma, Bina, Das, right? All these spheres. What do we do with them? How do we implement this in this world? I'm a soul, like I'm a floating little thing in my mind. Do you ever watch Mayor and Me? Not watch, listen to Mayor and Me. Oh, it's me and that's me. Nobody listen. Okay, we must redo it. I'm like, we're the only ones. Like, I feel like we need to do like a Thank You Hashem version of like Mayor and Me. Wow. How does not nobody? It's like the ultimate kids tape where like he has like it's almost like a Yetzer Hara, like he has like a Yetzer Tov that comes to him. So I'm always like, what? Who was me? Like me was his. It was like his nefesh halokis. It really was. It was like telling him where to go and how to act. So how do you act? So Hashem gave us clothing, and He gave us what we call in Hebrew it's levushin, clothing that we can take that soul and activate it into this world, because the soul is just floating. So what are the clothing? Anybody remember? Last week. Mitzvos, right? So mitzvos, and how do they manifest? In your thought, your speech, and action, right? I feel like we've come up with like acronyms already, like, you know, like PEMDAS, like whatever, like your thoughts, your speech, your actions, like, right? TSA. What? TSA. Right. What was that? By the way, I got so stuck on like PEMDAS and like whatever that I did not even remember what we were doing. Like I got stuck on just trying to remember the acronym. So we have this way of manifesting our soul. So my soul has kochos, and I want to bring them out into the world. How do I bring my kochos out into this world? With clothing, with the things that I think about, and with my speech, and with my action. And then it totally transforms. It gives your nefesh halokis like, okay, I could do something in this world. I can activate myself in this world. And the things that I think about, and the things that I say, and the things that I act out, that is how I can use my powers in this world. This is a very physical world. We were sent down here. The nefesh halokis, trust me, does not want to be here. All it wants to do is go back up. And then, by the way, at the end of times, it doesn't even want to return, because it's like, oh, I love it here, right? Like Neshamala, like Baby Rottenberg, right? He said it, like I always remember like hearing that song, and I'm like, what is happening here? Like, right? And like we understood it, but really, if you think about it, it's like, I don't want to go. Like, Neshama no, I don't want to go. Like, I want to be up there in Shemayim. And then Hashem says, even though it's amazing here in Shemayim, and it's beautiful, and we're all learning from Ziv HaShechina, and it's like amazing, I want you to come into this world. And then Neshama's like, I don't want to. He's like, fine, I'll give you clothing, and I'll give you food. I mean, like, what else do we need in life, right? Like, if you give me, like, a great outfit, like, that I could wear, and, like, a good night meal, like, then Neshama's like, fine, okay, I'll go down. And it goes down with the clothing, that it can always manifest itself, because you're like, I'm a soul, how do I manifest myself? The things that you think about, the things that you say, the things that you act out, the mitzvos that you do are tapping into the powers of the soul. That's mitzvos. Mitzvahs are great, and clothing is great. But here's the thing about clothing, and this will get us into chapter 5 today, is that the thing about clothing is that it only really helps when you're wearing it. Think about it. Like, I always joke, this is like my go-to like Instagram dress, because it's black and it goes into anything, right? So, but every time I'm teaching, I just throw on this dress. It's easy, because then after I whatever, I'm going to the gym or I'm going to anything, I'll change. But I put on my dress, right? So it's like when I'm teaching this, I'm wearing this. But the second I take it off, I can be somebody else, right? If I'm going to the beach and then I change. So these clothing that you have is only as good as when you're wearing it. And also, by the way, you know those days that you just don't look good, and then you end up going out and you meet everybody, right? And then the days you're like, I wasted this outfit, I'm gonna wear it again tomorrow. And then you're like, can I wear one more day? Right? Okay, I'll go wear one more day. I don't know, maybe that's just me, but where clothing is only as good as while you're wearing it. The second it comes off, it's not there anymore. Mitzvahs are like that. While I'm doing the mitzvah and I'm engaged in it, I'm invested in it. The second I step away from it, I'm not in it anymore. Okay? I think about this a lot. My daughter just went back to camp for the second half, and I'm always like, I don't need a new wardrobe. I just need to lose weight so I can fit into her clothing. She leaves the camp, and I run to her closet, and open it up. I'm like, okay, which Aviator Nation sweatshirt can I wear today? She just has it all, but she will never know if I'm wearing her clothing while she's in camp. That's the thing about clothing. Even though it's an incredible thing, and I'm not putting it down for 1 second, but just understand that it's only while you have it. Happens to be one time. She was looking through my phone, and she was away, and I go to Toronto. She doesn't have visiting day, but I went to my boys' visiting, and she's like, "Did you wear my skirt?" I was like, "Shoot!" Anytime I'm wearing her clothing, I can't I cannot document it. And I was like, it was just the perfect skirt, the good length, went with anything. So clothing are your mitzvahs. You have them. You put them on, you take them off. You put on tefillin, you take them off. You bench left, you walk away, right? And when you're in it, you're so in it, and your soul's activated. But what's deeper than clothing? Deeper than clothing is food. Because even though my daughter she'll never know if I wore a skirt. But if I put on 10 pounds while she was away from camp and I come back, she's like, what were you eating? And I was like, you guys are away. So I was eating pizza, right? I wasn't making dinner. So the thing with food is that it kind of sticks with you no matter what. It's that saying, you are what you eat? That's really what ends up happening. So when we refer to clothing, are you scared about that? What? Put it down. I know. And if you think about it, by the way, anybody who's struggling, not that I'm a dietitian, I'm far from that. I'm always struggling. This is something that I'm always thinking about and working on. But the second you switch it in your mindset that you are what you eat, and then you're like, oh, I'm also taking care of a neshama. You think about all the tzaddikim, the Rambam, he wrote a book on healthy eating. He talks about whole wheat flour before anybody talks about whole wheat flour, because there is a concept that you are what you eat. Think about when you're pregnant, right? You cannot eat certain things, right? Because you are what you eat. It affects you. Food, soul food, is different than soul clothing. So levushim, which we said are mitzvos, clothing is actually Torah. So Torah, what? Food is Torah. Yeah, I'm sorry. Soul food is Torah. Clothing is your mitzvos, and food is Torah. Now, here's the cool thing about Torah, because Torah really is both, because Torah is a mitzvah also. So Torah gets really everything. So now we always talk about Torah. And first of all, for women, I think that it's just important to put it out there. When we talk Torah, okay, I had to memorize Hazinu, Pirkei Avos, whatever it is. It's just get me out of school so that I can just, go to seminary so that I could just go and get married, so I could just go and have children, and Torah, right? Okay, so I wake up my husband to make sure that he has chavrusa, and then I drive my boy, and I say this all the time, if my boys miss the bus, I'm like, I just missed my workout, but I'm going to drive you, and all the Torah that you're learning is going to be my Torah also, and I say it in a very passive-aggressive way, but I try to, right? Or I'm bringing my son dinner because he doesn't like the food there, he likes chicken fingers and French fries, and that's it. So I drive him supper every night, and I'm this food is going into his body so that I can learn Torah. We think about it as women, sometimes it's hard for us to connect to Torah. Okay, but first of all, you're all here and you're all learning Torah. But Torah is a very, very deep thing, because once it becomes part of you, you can't undo it. You can't unhear something once you hear it. 90s halachos, you can't do that. You're Shah, don't tell me, I don't want to hear, I just want, or you see like, you overhear a conversation and you're like, I know I should stop it, but I really want to hear it. Once you hear it, you can't unhear it. Once you know something, you can't unknow it. You learn a halacha, it will haunt you for the rest of your life if you don't do it, right? Like, you're like, I didn't want to hear that. Why? Because as soon as you know something, as soon as it becomes part of your makeup and connects to your soul, like attaches to your soul, it becomes part of you. It's ingested. It's who you are. So mitzvos, clothing are the mitzvos that we do, and then Torah is the food. So what we're trying, and this sounds like scary and overwhelming and big, but think about it for 1 second. Our soul came down into this world. Our soul wants to connect to this world. My soul is esoteric. It's not here. It's not part of this world. How do I activate it? Through clothing, through mitzvos, and through my Torah knowledge and through my Torah study. And the more I know, the more food I eat, the more food I ingest. It's like, by the way, it's like a vicious cycle. You just want more. You add on and you want more because you start to realize that your soul is kicking in. It's like activating. It wants more. It wants to connect. It's hearing from Hashem and it's starting to almost like, I would just say like fall in love with what it's doing here in this world. You know, the Nefesh Elokis had a hard time when it came down here. It's like, I don't want to be here. Send me out of here. And then your animal soul's like, I love it here, right? It's like, my kids, anything that's fun, it's like, it's Orlando. Like, you know, like that in their minds is like the most exciting thing. They're like, oh my gosh, it's like Orlando, right? That's what your Nefesh Bahamas feels like. Your Nefesh Bahamas was always fine. But now your Nefesh Elokis needs this to thrive in this world. And you know these things, you start to activate and you start to feel it. You're like, oh, I fed my soul this morning. Like, did you feed your soul? And that's why, by the way, like I always try like to write down like intentions, the things that I want to learn. Or as I'm learning, like here, now this summer, now you're all learning. Now you all have this knowledge. Your soul was activated by this. And now it just wants to eat more. It just wants to fill its purpose in this world. And you do that through learning Torah and through doing the mitzvos. But even more so, Torah is a mitzvah. So it's like even more. Okay, any questions on these? No. Okay, fine. So what we're going to do now is we're going to move on to the other soul. We've been spending a lot of time here just talking about the godly soul, and the godly soul has clothing, and the godly soul has food, and the godly soul has kochos, and it has powers, and it can activate in this world. So what about the animal soul? So I remember somebody asked a question last week. I think it was like after class. I forgot what it was. Like, is the animal soul the Yetzer Hara? Somebody asked that? Yeah? That was you, right? Okay, so why would you think it's the Yetzer Hara? Like, what? Like, what's our envision? Like, if we were to envision the Yetzer Hara, like, what would it be?
Well, like, growing up, it was always the bad guy.
Growing up. I love how we start by saying growing up because we're all grown up. So it's like, we grew up already. Like, why are now, at this point in my life, am I just taking everything and just flipping it on its head? And we're like, no, there's no such thing as that. Like, you think tomorrow's Tisha B'Av? No, it's the day the Mashiach is going to be born, right? So like we're sitting in camp, we're all crying, stepping on our clothing right before Tisha B'Av. Did you ever do that? Like you couldn't, right? In camp, you're not wearing clean clothing, so everyone just dumped out their whole suitcase. Everyone's like stepping on their suitcase. Oh, he's going to Kinnis. Oh my gosh, 2 more hours. And like all of a sudden, I'm at the point of my life where I'm like, I love Tisha B'Av. Like this is going to be the biggest yontif. Like Mashiach is going to be born. Like we're starting new again. So growing up, the Yetzer Hara was the bad guy, right? So why would we have a bad guy?
Challenge us to do good. I mean, that's what we always are told.
Right, to challenge us to do good. Which, by the way, is a much better way than saying he's the bad guy. To challenge us to do good, like, I like that, is so much better as saying that there's an evil guy, there's a bad guy with a pitchfork and red horns. There isn't, right? So let's try to understand who the animal soul is and, like, what its purpose here is in this world. And by the way, we were given it first. So, like, we have to give it some attention. So we said the animal soul is that baby that cries, that just wants whatever they want, the teenager that cries, and it just wants to fill as much space as it can here in this world. Just get as much as it can, as opposed to the godly soul that just wants to go up. Now, the animal soul is made up of 10 soul powers, Chachma Bina Das, right? And 7 emotional traits. And it also has food. And it also has clothing. So it sounds very similar to the godly soul. It has everything. And this I learned from, like, Reb Shais Taub. He was saying that when your animal soul is in the driver's seat, it's like when the kids are running the home. It's when the emotions are running the intellect. We spent like 3 classes trying to say that Your intellect has to drive your emotions. So the things that you think about activate your emotions. Here we're saying that the animal soul lets the emotions run here. What happens to you when you let your emotions be the parents? When the kids run the house, what does it look like? Chaos, right? Like tohu, like in Hebrew we say tohu. It's absolute chaos. It's like if I were just to let my kids run the house by themselves, I mean, some of my kids would probably do a better job running it, but like the idea that your emotions can control your intellect, by the way, happens to be a Breslov concept. So we can get to that, and if anybody wants to argue that, I love how I looked at Adina as like the Breslover here in the room. But like it is the concept where if you think, just for 1 second, I'm like stepping away from Chabad, Breslov Hasidus says activate your emotions and then start thinking. So like if you ever see Breslovers dancing on top of trucks, like what are they doing? They're activating their emotions, they're dancing, there's movement, there's shaking, there's like, like hislavos, is that what it is? Like that feeling that activates their intellect. Whereas opposed to if you walk into a Chabad yeshiva, everything that you're being addressed with starts always with Torah. It always starts with like a mimer from the Rebbe. Like if you go to the aisle, the Rebbe's always sitting there. Why? Because he says, start over here and then let it come down. And here in Tanya is explaining that if you let your animal soul run the show, it will be chaos. So the animal soul has everything that the godly soul has, but it lets the kids run the home. So it lets the emotions run your intellect. And that's not necessarily a healthy way of living. Sometimes it's good, and sometimes you feel something and then you want to act upon it. But before you act upon it, really tap into your intellect. What the animal soul does, the animal says, listen, I want a cheeseburger, right? Like, okay, I'm using that example because it's so silly, but like, I want a cheeseburger. I'm going to make myself, I'm going to go buy, I'm going to do whatever I have to do to get this cheeseburger. And then I'm going to tell my intellect two things. I'm going to tell my intellect, go figure out how to get the cheeseburger. And then also figure out how not to feel guilty about it. Because like, where does guilt come from? Guilt comes from overthinking things, whatever. So the animal soul just wants to do what it wants to do without feeling bad about it, without having the guilt, and without really activating the intellect. So when we talk about evil and bad, bless you, it's not really, there is no evil here. There's no bad guy. What does evil mean? Evil versus good, right? So what does good mean? Sorry, I'm getting like a little like tangential, but like we're saying that the animal soul, sometimes we think it's the Sahara. Why? Because we think that that's the bad, chaotic part of us that just wants, chaos and like, Netflix and pizza bagels and whatever it wants, right? Versus the godly soul, we said this last week, that no, I want brick oven pizza, I want olam haba, I want amazing things, right? No, they both have the same kochos and they both have the same abilities. One just goes from top to bottom and one goes from bottom to up. So this, by the way, will help you think about it, will help you balance your feelings. Sometimes we have feelings that like
Yitzhak, we're going to address later on.
Right.
I feel like
just start from scratch. Like forget what we think about as the Sahara, right? Like, so what do we think is, so what is evil? What does evil mean? Not evil, not scary. So real evil, obviously is not evil, but what do you think evil is? I think you tapped into it a little bit. Like what would evil be? What would be something that's
detrimental?
Detrimental. So what he explains in Tanya is that the word for the Yetzer Hara he refers to in its Aramaic word is Sitra Achra, which means the other side. Okay? When we're given these powers, all we're supposed to do is take these powers and these clothing and this food and connect it back to Hashem. When you do something and you don't connect it back to Hashem, that's Sitra Achra. That's the other side. That's not evil. There's no pitchfork and there's no scary Esav. But that means if you're not connecting it back to Hashem, then you're activating the other side. And there's a lot that we can do with our powers to connect back to Hashem, but what we struggle with is doing it just for the sake of just doing it. So like you can be an extremely nice person, and I say this all the time, like I'm such a people pleaser to the point where it's like I probably should go to therapy for it. But a lot of times I'm not necessarily doing it to get closer to Hashem. I'm doing it because I need validation. That's Sitra Achra. That's the other side. That's feeding into your animal soul because you're not connecting it back to godliness. So you have to think about all the things in your life. If you're not looking at that child and saying, I'm taking care of you now because you're a child of Hashem and you're an neshama that was given to me, and I can connect you back to Hashem, and I know exactly where I can see who you are, and I can bring it back to Hashem, then you're serving the other side. You're literally feeding into the Yetzer Hara. And we do that sometimes. We're like, I was just, Mary, like I went yesterday to Target because my girls left the house and they went to sleepaway camp and it was amazing. I'm just like walking around Target and I need absolutely nothing. But you know the $5 section in the front? So I'm like, oh, this would be amazing. I have my, my 5-year-old at home and she's going to come home and she's going to be bored. I buy every single tchotchke. And I'm like, I'm not doing this because I want, because I see godliness and I'm doing this so that she could come home and not watch. Like, that's Sitra Achra. No. So that is good, but as long as, right. I guess you're right. I could twist it. So by the way, you have to really use your head and think while you're doing it. And as long as you think about Hashem while you're doing it, then you're doing it right. So evil is not real evil. Evil just means I'm not bringing it and connecting it back to Hashem. I'm only doing it for myself. I'm only being, think of an example of something that you could do, that you can easily just do it for your animal soul, or you can flip it and bring it back to Hashem.
I feel like Hasidim, will buy like the silver bowl for the challah, let's say, and they do it for the challah. Like the Rebbes are very into their nice things, and they use it to elevate mitzvos, right? To connect. So I feel like if you're buying that without the elevation part, meaning you just want to make your table nice or whatever,
then you're missing that piece. Then you're feeding into that other side. Exactly. Right. So funny. My daughter, I must be hearing me say these things all the time. So she sent me this video. She's in camp and she's busy telling a girl how Aviator Nation helps her become closer to Hashem. I will send it to the chat after. I was like, it was like a 5-minute Dvar Torah. I was like, you could go viral. Let's put this on. She's like, I need a podcast. And she's busy telling her like, I feel good. So I'm happy for myself. So that I feel good about myself. So I can serve Hashem better with this Happy and Aviator Nation sweatshirt. And then her friend's like, not such Gashmias. She's like, no, you take the Gashmias and you lift it up. I'm like, wow. I'm like, something's going in there, right? Like she hears that. We have to say that all the time. And if we don't elevate it, then that's evil. So it's like holiness is what we refer to as Kedusha, okay? And then when there's Sitra Achra, when there's evil, and by the way, holiness means, Kedusha is always like a funny word. It means like surrendered. It means like I take whatever you gave me and I serve Hashem with it. Where as opposed to me taking whatever I have and I'm just, self-fulfilling prophecy. And I'm just giving myself whatever I need to feel good about myself. Validation, beautiful table, the neighbors will talk about the silver on the table, so that's Sitra Achra. So now, why though is it so hard? If I'm telling you that all you have to do is take everything in this world and connect back to Hashem. So it's so easy, right? But how come it's not? Oh my God. Thank you. No? Oh, okay. It's fine. What? It was Gourmet Lot? Okay, perfect. I don't think I have those.
Instacart.
What?
Your Instacart.
Oh, my Instacart's here to me. It's like, I'm telling you, it's like so life-changing. I feel like we obviously I was talking about this, like the 9 days, like we couldn't do laundry because it was like real work or whatever. Rosh Chodesh, we're not supposed to do laundry because it was hard work. Like it's a vacation for us. I'm like, grocery shopping has become that. It's amazing. Except Trader Joe's. That's like the last one. But either way, so I'm telling you right now that you can just, whatever you have, if you take it and you connect it back to Hashem, then you're good to go. So why can't I always do that? So a mashal for this, by the way, this is actually like I heard this and it connected back to a parsha, but it's something that we have to practice all the time. And for me, like the metaphor that spoke to me the clearest, and I always try to find like Michelle that I write, is like a grape. Okay, a grape, if you think about it, is if you were to hold a grape up to the light, what would you see when you hold a grape up to the light? You would see the seed, right? Why? Because it has this translucent cover over it, but because it's translucent, and if you hold it up to the light, you're able to see the seed. What does this seed represent? When you see a seed, right? What does that tell you? That seed. The what?
The beginning.
The beginning, right? Where this came from. Oh, this apple didn't just come from Gourmet Glatt. This apple came from the seed that was planted by a farmer who worked it and who davened for rain. This seed comes from Hashem. This grape comes from Hashem. A grape is so clear you can see it. What if I took an orange and I held it up to the light, would I be able to see anything? No. So why? Why can't I see an orange? It's a thicker peel, right? How do you say, what is this word in Hebrew that I said we're going to start off with? A klipa. A klipa is a peel. So what does it mean that something has a klipa, by the way, another word for klipa, peel, husk, the outside covering, right? Certain fruits have much thicker klipas, right? Like a coconut. Coconut, very difficult, right? I don't even know how anybody eats it or opens it. Actually, at one point, my Jamaican babysitter, remember Sylvie? She used to bring home coconut, like from... And she was like hammering, and then she would like carve it out and make it into a drink. She was like amazing, and I would like have these like coconut drinks. Like I would never be able to. I wouldn't even buy it. Like I stay away from fruit that has like massive peel. Like I just always, I'm like grapes. Just wash them, put them on the table, right? I don't have to start peeling anything. One point I got into grapefruits, and then I'm like, no, this is too much, right? A klipa is something that's an outside like encasing, like a husk, a peel that blocks us from getting to the inside. So the thicker the klipa, the more work it's going to take for me. So that's why, by the way, if you ever hear like, I feel like men throw out this word like a little bit more than like, I don't know, maybe because like I'm around, like I hear my husband, they're always talking, oh, it's klipas, it's klipas, it's klipas. I'm like, what's klipas? Klipas are layers and peels that are not letting you get to who you are or where you need to be. But Hashem puts the peel there so that we can peel it. So the Yetzer Hara can have a lot of klipas. The Yetzer Hara, or whatever we refer to in our mind as Yetzer Hara, evil. What's evil? It's not evil. It's klipas. It's a way for us. We have to work harder. We said this last week. Like the more time you spend on a child, the more you grow to love them. Why? Because you put effort into it. So the more you have to peel, the more you're able to take off those layers and layers and layers. You're able to see where it comes from Hashem. So why can't we always see Hashem? Because of klipas. What do we have to do? We have to peel off the klipa, right? We have to take off the outside. So the outside encasing. So let's say, and like, God forbid, like if somebody is struggling with let's say physical issues or mental health issues, whatever they're going through, those layers are stopping them from getting to where they need to be. They have to remove that, okay? They have to remove the outside. Does this make sense? Yeah? Okay, it's like there's a whole chapter on it, but I want to just explain that there's nothing bad. But there are, by the way, you can ask yourself, and I'll just play devil's advocate, like, what about klipas that I can't remove? What about, let's say, not kosher food? There must be a lot of klipas on there, because I can't have it and I can't access it, as opposed to kosher food. I can have, right? I can eat that. Or let's say, like, relationships that you're like, the Torah says, like, a Kohen cannot marry this person. You are not allowed to marry your brother. You're not allowed to, right? Like, you can marry your uncle, but you can't marry this, right? What are all these laws? Like, sometimes you get bogged down by it. They're all layers of protection. Hashem is saying, these things you can access, the things that are usr, oh wait, usr is like such a scary word, the things that are usr that you're not allowed to do, those Hashem says, I'm telling you, I'm giving you advice, I'm telling you, you don't have to go there. Those are things that you don't need to release the sparks from. If I want you to go around this world like the godly soul wants to do, and I want you to collect sparks, and I want you to bring everything back to me, there are certain things you don't have to worry about them. The rest of the world can, the other nations can. It's not accessible to you. It's not. And by the way, you should just know that the non-Jewish people also, they have Sheva Mitzvahs Pnei Noach. They have certain things that they're also usher that they're not allowed to do. So sometimes we ask ourselves, why are all these things usher? Oh, it's so annoying. Like Hashem's so mean. Like, I can't do this, and I can't do this, and I can't do laundry in 9 days, and I can't, whatever. I don't know if that's like one of the 613 mitzvahs, but like, all these things that you can't do, it's like, oh my God, there's so many rules and regulations. Like, how is this a relationship? If you think about it the other way, you say, actually, like Hashem is basically telling me what I should tap into and what I shouldn't. Hashem is telling me, go there, don't go there. Just don't go there. It's fine. I'm telling you, it's usher. You're not going to be able to pull off the klipa. That is a coconut. Like you can. And if you, by the way, use that as like a metaphor, like for when you're supposed to be getting something or supposed to be doing something and you're told that you're not allowed to go there, like no trespassing, don't view it as like, oh, I can't go there. Like, view it as, thank you. Thank you, Hashem, for telling me that I don't have to go there. So now I know that I can avoid all those things, but there's so many other things to do. And there's very few things, by the way, that you can't peel off klipas from. Like, almost everything you couldn't find the godliness in it. Other than, like I'm trying to think, like, bless you, like, in work, okay? I think about this all the time. Like, I work with a lot of, let's say, not Jewish people, and then there's some Jewish people, and then there's some people that I'm sitting next to, and then there's some people who are in downstairs basement. I'm never going to see them. They come upstairs and like, hi, how are you? And I'm like, great. But like, you're not really easily accessible to me. You're downstairs. But the people that are around me, I have to find godliness in them. Jewish, not Jewish, friendly, not friendly. They're right here in front of me. They're easy klipas to peel. They're all grapes. Okay, further down there, an orange. In the basement, there are coconuts. I can't get to them. But then you have to start thinking about the things that everything is really easily accessible to you. All you have to do is find Hashem in it. When you're building a house, when you're setting your Shabbos table, and you could say, as you're setting the Shabbos table, this is a beautiful becher that I just purchased for my husband, and he's going to make Kiddush, and he's going to elevate it. And this beautiful silverware, I went to the mikvah, I went to Amazing Savings, I toggled them, I dropped 5 spoons in, I got them, now they're here on my table, right? This beautiful, whatever you're putting on your table, like, as you're shopping, you're peeling off klipas. You're like, yes, this fish is $17 a pound, but I'm buying it with Kavod Shabbos, and it's kosher, and I can make it into my, and that's it. The only thing that's not accessible to you is maybe like wine that's like not mavashal, and you have like a not Jewish babysitter in your house, right? Or let's say I stole something from the store. Then that's not. Those are things you're not allowed to do. Those are usr. But there's very few things that are usr about your Shabbos table. You can literally take your entire Shabbos table and uplift it and bring it back to Hashem by just peeling off klipas. Some are bigger klipas than others. Like if you want to get over the fact that like kosher food's so expensive or kosher camp is so expensive, right? Oh my gosh, it's crazy. Now my kids came home in between camp, and by the way, I'm like, you've heard my voice though. I'm like, I spent $1,500 this week repacking my kids, right? I spent $1,500 for my kids to go back to an amazing camp where they're going to feel connected to Hashem, where they're singing Jewish songs, and they're benching, and they're learning, and they're this, like nothing. Like Nechama, my 5-year-old, she comes home, she's like, can we bench out loud at the Shabbos table? And I'm like, there you go. Or day camp. $1,800 for the summer, plus $250 for transportation, plus $150 for hot lunch, which she loves hot lunch in camp. Like, you know those kids that love hot lunch, right? I'm like, $2,400, and she wants to bench out loud. Our whole family, I peeled off all those klipas, and now here it is. I'm bringing it back to Hashem. And the second that you don't, then you're serving a sitra achra. Then you're just letting your animal soul run this place. You're doing the other side. And we do this. We do this a lot. I heard this from Gedali Fenster, and maybe I repeated this. I love it so much. He says, venting is being poor. When you vent, you're tapping into that poor side of you. Feeling gratitude and saying good things is connecting to a rich mindset. And that's because when you are feeding the other side, there's poverty there. You're feeding it. You're just like, you're venting about it. You're saying, you're not finding the godliness in it. You take, and by the way, if you ever forget this, just take a grape for 1 second, look at the light, and you're like, there's a seed in here. You look at your kid, and you're like, there's a neshama in there. You look at your coffee, and you're like, this coffee is amazing. It's going to give me koach for the entire day. And the second you don't, and you're like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. This will make a great post, which I do, by the way. And I'm feeding into this, and you're saying, this is just for myself. That's klipas. That's like not peeling off a klipa. That's the other side. You have to find out. You have to say, this coffee is going to help me get through my day. It's going to help me be calmer. It's going to help me be a better mother. Sometimes I use this word thinking like on a fast day. And I'm like, this is why I don't always fast. Like we're like, what's more important, being a good mother or like serving Hashem? How can I serve Hashem and be a good mother, right? We have to think about this. So what we're learning from here is that the animal soul has the same tendencies has the same soul powers and clothing and food. But it does it, let's say, on a very animalistic, physical, taking care of itself. What the Nefesh Elokis does comes in and says, no, take it and bring it all back to Hashem. So we train the animal soul to do that. It's like, if you think about it, it's an animal. You can train animals, right? You train them, let's say, you give them they do a trick, you give them a fish, right? You have to train your animal soul like this also. You can't let it feed into the other side. You have to train it. And the more you train it, by the way, like fulfilling the animal soul is amazing. It feels so good. You tell him, this is for Shabbos, this is good. But in the godly soul is just like winking. And the godly soul is like, this actually is like yichud between me and Hashem. Like, I always hear this concept of like yichud, right? Like actually connected, right? Yichud, we probably only know yichud from like yichud room. What does that mean? It means that finally at one point the chassan and kala could be together without anybody else. When we can uplift all these sparks and find all the seeds and everything, we literally are like the yechidus with Hashem because we connect to the will of Hashem. And we started off by saying will. Will is so much deeper. If I can connect to somebody's will, it's so deep because I really know what makes that person happy. So a Hallmark card from Trader Joe's, not really going to make me so happy. But if you sit down there and you write a handwritten letter to that person, that's really connecting to that person. Or like when do you ever have this, like your kid sees that you're having a hard time, or like your husband sees you're having a hard time, or somebody sees you're having a hard time, and then they bring you the thing that you need to calm you down or make you feel better, or like whatever it is, you're like, oh my gosh, I love that person. Like, it's just such a silly example, but like my daughter, she loves to bake, and she saw that like I was literally losing it because I was in between like 3 or 4 different clean leads at one point in my life, and she knows that like I need my coffee, and I love pancakes. It's like my thing. I know it's like at this point in my life I should not be pancakes. She made me pancakes. She brought it to my room, and I really wanted to be like, who's out the door? Don't open up the door. Like, don't come in. Like, let me just cry. And she opened the door and she brought me this tray, and I was like, oh my God, like she knew what I needed. So it's like when you connect to that seed and you bring it back to Hashem, the godly soul is so happy. The animal soul's happy. He's good. He's appeased. It's good. You fed me. I feel good. The neshama elokis, the godly soul is like, wow, like you really, really know me. It's like the little things like that which take it to the next level. And I think that we can tie this all the way back to da'as and to our intellect and to our emotions. But most importantly, what we should take from here is that what is klipas? Klipas are not evil, and they're not the other side. I mean, they're not the bad guy. They're just the other side. So the second that you serve the other side, you feed the other side, he wants more. Give me more, give me more, give me more. But the second you flip it and you bring it back to the nefesh elokis, to the godly soul, that's when it says, this is me. This is me. Like, it says in the story of Adam and Chava, just to go back, and it says, Vayedas ishto, he knew his wife. When Adam saw Chava, he said, this is bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh. This is me. All the other animals, they're great. All the other animals, I got to know them. I named them. I did. It says that Adam got to know all the animals, and he couldn't find a relationship with them. But when he saw Chava, he said, this is me. This is bone of my bone. This is who I am. This is what I want to be connected to. And then it says, Vayedas ishto. And then he knew his wife. That's what it is. The more you serve, the more you bring everything back to Hashem, the more you get closer to Hashem. It's like a practice, and you keep practicing, and all you have to do is like peel off the klipa. It's funny, recently, I don't know if you heard the song Rachel yet, but there was like in TYH Hashem, they produce a lot of music, and somebody sent this song. It was like a young boy from like Long Beach, literally like a 10th grade boy who wrote the song about klipas. He's like in Long Beach, which is like a very yeshiva, not necessarily like, they don't talk the language of like Hasidus and Tanya and klipas, but he wrote this song, which is an incredible song about peeling off the klipas. And in the song, he writes about like the orange, an orange is so beautiful, but it has such a thick peel. And then the second you peel it off, you find the godliness in it. So, but you have to peel off the klipas to find it. And we have klipas on ourselves, like all over ourselves, and as soon as you peel it off, you find it, and then once you have it, you have it. So you have to spend your life peeling those off, and like you could be, presented with a very difficult person in your life, or a child, or whatever it is, or a mother-in-law, I love my mother-in-law, so it doesn't matter, but like you can be presented with something so difficult, and you're like, why is this difficult person in my life? Why is she here? Why is this happening to me? Why is my kid throwing a tantrum? Like, what is it? Like, this is so bad. Like, I don't want to be part of this. I want to walk out of the room. And then you're like, 1 second. There's godliness in this situation. And the second I feed into why is this happening to me, other side, sitra achra. I'm not being connected to Hashem. But the second you find the godliness and you're like, it's so easy, just peel it off. It's like that tangerine that is like, or like clementines are very easy to peel, but like oranges are not, right? So it's a clementine, it's not an orange. And then you could find it in it, and once you do that, you bring it back, and that's the opposite of feeding the animal soul, but feeding the godly soul. Okay. I really wanted to go further, but I'm realizing this is a lot. So I'm going to stop here and I'll take questions. Okay.
What does that mean once you have it, you have it? Like, let's say you have a good day with your daughter. That's hard, let's say. Or like,
at night she goes to sleep and she regrows another clip. It just pops up somewhere else.
That mother-in-law, like, you find godliness, you're good. Like, there are times when you could be like, oh my God, like, we have got to like a good place, and it's like 2 years of good, and then it's like,
right. So that's a very good question. So the thing is that there are sparks everywhere. Like, you have to start to train your mind to see, like, like when you close your eyes very tight and you see like little dots, like you see sparks, they're everywhere. We can't physically see them, but they're there. As soon as you feel like, we're in a good place, I got it, you release that spark. There are still tons more sparks. Like, think about it, if you think about the Jewish people when it came to Gullus. Why did we go to Gullus? Like, why are we thrown into Gullus? Hashem hate us? Like, we're bad boys, go to Gullus. No. The reason we're in Gullus is because we have to collect sparks. There are tons of klipos here. But once you totally take off all those klipos, you don't have to go back. That's why, by the way, it says that we don't have to go back to Mitzrayim. Why don't we have to go back to Mitzrayim? Jews are not supposed to really go to Egypt. Even though everybody wants whatever, it's like it's not up there with like south of France, but like it's definitely, people go there. But we're not supposed to, because it says in Mitzrayim we took out all the sparks from Mitzrayim.
What does that mean today? Like
today,
that you like once you have it, you have it. Like,
you've released that spark. It could be that there's more. The only time you don't have to go back there is when everything is done. It's funny, like I feel like this a lot. Like I always like to, not like major travel, but I like to find new spots and places. And then once I find it, I'm like, oh, I always want to go there. And then like, let's say like Brooklyn Bridge Park. It sounds so, not Brooklyn Bridge, like it's like one of these parks like on the water and it's so nice. And when we went there and discovered it, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so cute. And we're like, this summer, we're like, hey, let's go back there. We went back there and we're like, what are we doing here? Like, it's fine. Like, but there's nothing here. Like, there's nothing here anymore. There's no more sparks that we have to collect. If there was something exciting, that means that I was attracted to it. But if I don't, you don't feel it. Like, if you ever feel like, even with a relationship with a friend and you're like, you've gotten whatever you needed from them and you move on, it's not a bad thing. It's like, I always say this, friends are about a common future, not a shared past. It's like, if you just do shared pasts, you've gotten the sparks. It's about a common future. It's like things that I'm looking forward to. So yes, maybe you had it, you released those sparks, but there's going to come up in another way. And also view it, if you had a good run, view it as you got past those things. Other things are going to come up. But the more sparks that need to be released, the longer you'll be with that person or that situation or that experience. You have to collect all those sparks. There's sparks everywhere. And it's like, I try to say that when I'm confronted with different, she's loaded. Like with a lot of stuff, right? Like there's a lot, but sparks, by the way, are light. Okay, so the bigger the klipa, the more light there is. So now, unfortunately, and I don't know if I wanted to go in here, but like unfortunately, and by the way, the things that we can't, that are such thick klipas, we don't have to worry about. Hashem will take care of those. But unfortunately, sometimes you'll find yourself in a situation where maybe like you weren't meant to be. Or like, it's not good. Right? Like, or it's like, I don't know if you've ever like Amach and I thought we were going to this like concert, whatever, and it was like, it sounded like it was a Jewish singer, but I got there and it was like a lot of not Jewish people there. It was like, I can't explain it. Like, you just didn't feel good. Like, you're like, I don't know, my neshama is not feeling so comfortable here. But guess what? You're there for a reason. And retrain your mind and say, okay, I'm here for something. Okay, once I'm here, let me find it. It's like you went down into the garbage room, like my mother has in her building now, like an incinerator, like she's in the Regency. So like you put your garbage in and you go down to the 4th floor. You're like, that's so cool. My kids are like, where does it go? I'm like, down to the basement, know where you want to go. But let's say you find yourself in the basement. Let's say you find yourself in the garbage room and you're like, oh my God, I did not mean to be here. There must be something here that I should be gathering. So once you're there, even though we don't want to put ourselves there, but once you're there, if you're in an unfortunate situation or if you're in, I don't know, like you end up at the wrong concert or you end up, I'm just trying to think of like a good example and nothing's coming to my mind, but.
Does that happen with people, like a person that you're in a relationship with that like, you're like, oh, why, like I don't see anything good from this? Like not someone that you could just break away from.
So let's say, yeah, so you know what a good example, let's say dating, right? So like you date and you spend time with somebody for a long time, right? And you're like, I'm dating this guy and you're like, you thinking, like, and nothing happened from it. No. There was something that had to come out from that. Even if he was not right and if he wasn't good, if he was abusive, whatever, for some reason I had to stop that. Hashem put me there. I may as well collect the sparks. Wait, you were saying something else though.
I was saying like someone who's part of your life that it's not like a friend that you could just be like, hey, I'm cutting ties. Like someone who's really part of your life, but like you were saying, like there's a lot of klipas there, but like you can't really like, you know what I mean?
Right. And by the way, if you'll start to use this terminology, like just think it in your head. You're like, oh, she's got like thick klipas, right? Or like there's thickness there that I have to break through.
I think that if you focus more on your own klipas and stop looking at other people's klipas, that's gonna be
right.
How you tap into seeing everything through the godly lens. If you're focused on, oh, she has klipas, no, what are my klipas? How do I get through my klipas? And then you're able to break through and see.
And also that klipas are not like, I think the misconception, I think what we're like, we are meant to journey. Like we are meant to break through klipas. We're meant to look at ourselves. Every trigger that you see is there to teach you to break through your own klipas. It's not about seeing others. Like,
Right.
And if any, like I had this all the time. Like you ever have like, I don't know, have like a bad day with your husband, but like you're building up. Like think of that like your daughter the next day is going to throw a tantrum, but yesterday she made you pancakes. Like that's building through. Like that klipa's already.
Right.
We're meant to journey. It's not meant to be easy. We're not.
Right. So it happens to be what you're saying is so true. Like we have to go through those klipas, but The klipa of the animal's soul in Hebrew is called a klipas noga, which is, I think we touched on this a little bit last week, which is a noga, which is like shiny. It's a shiny peel. It's like a grape. You can see through the seed. So, and by the way, I think we said this also, like we're talking about the nails, right? Like why your body had a klipas noga on it. It had like a covering on it. It had a covering on it, an encasing, but a shiny one. It's a good one. It's a nice one. You're supposed to have some klipa because it's also like, by the way, like a protection, you know? Shais Taub gave this example also about grapes. Like it says that before the Meraglim went in to Eretz Yisrael, it says that it was the time of the harvesting of the grapes. Which, by the way, is something that we're with right now, because the whole thing of Meraglim, when we have Tisha B'Av, and it's like very like in this time, right? And that it's the time of the harvesting of the grapes. Why does it say the time of the harvesting of the grapes? Because what was their whole fear? Why did the Meraglim not want to go in? They didn't want to go in because they had it so good. They were just neshamos. They were godly souls in the midbar. They had food coming from heaven. They were drinking water from Be'er Miriam. They were learning Torah from Hashem. Like, they had it so good. Now Hashem's like, okay, pack up, we're going into the land of Israel. What's in the land of Israel? Oh my gosh, we have to work the land. There's a mitzvah of Shemitah. There's a mitzvah of Karbanos. We have to have, our animals, and we have to work the fields, and we have to It's like, let's go back. I just want man. I just want, I would love to try that, right? Or I just want, beautiful, fresh, water, springs of water. Like in Eretz Yisrael, there's not so much water. You have to go and get the water. You have to bring it. In the Midbar, it was amazing. So the whole reason that they didn't want to go, they're like, if we go into Eretz Yisrael, we're going to have to work so hard. We don't want that. We don't want to have to peel off klipas. And Hashem says, no, you're wrong. The whole avoda is, the whole point of life is to peel off klipas, not just to be a neshama elokis. So go there. And the fact that it says it's from the harvesting of the grapes is to remind us that there is an outer casing. There is a cover over there, but you can see Hashem.
Right, it's not a barrier, it's actually the goal.
It's not a barrier, it's the goal. I like that. Yeah, that's really what it is. Okay. Mary, do you want to add anything? She's our co-teacher. No? Okay, fine. So I'm going to end this here.